So I've gotten a lot of questions on my YouTube channel about why I chose to learn Spanish and how I'm going about it. But the main reason I chose Spanish is because it speaks to me personally. People say that when you choose a second language to learn, you should sort of think of it like a second home. And so it isn't just about how the language sounds, although that is an important part, or even how useful it might be to you in the business world or as far as jobs are concerned, because all of that is going to go out the window if you don't love the culture surrounding the language, that being the art, music, cinema, literature that has come out of the language and the cultural practices therein, the sports, los deportes, um, all of these things are going to be really important, right? And so when I think about Spanish, a language which is extremely diverse and international in nature, I found myself falling in love with all manners of Spanish culture and in all of its iterations. So you could go somewhere as far away as Puerto Rico or, back to the old country. It doesn't particularly matter. Talking on some equatorial Guinea type shit, you can go all over the world and find Spanish. But that diversity, which is innate to the language, makes it even more fascinating, especially from the perspective of a learner, because you don't just have, European and Mexican Spanish, you also have Latin American Spanish, where the presence of entirely different conjugations exists, such as voceo taking the place of tu, which is the informal you, which I'll get to perhaps at some point in this video, or maybe another video. But if I were to put it very briefly, Spanish speaks to my soul. When I hear it, when I speak it, when I think about it, and when I consume content which comes from Spanish cultures, and yes, indeed, when I speak to Spanish speakers, I feel such a rush of euphoria and passion which is unparalleled. Moreover, I think that English doesn't have a kind of enchantment about it. It doesn't have a kind of romance about it. You know, some people might say, el inglés es el idioma de los negocios. English is the language of business. But you might also say that el español es el idioma de los sueños. Maybe, perhaps, that Spanish is the language of dreams. I think that this is an undeniable component of things for me. But if I were to take it even further, as an avid fan of history and of politics, particularly as it pertains to the global South and Latin America with the Pink Tide movement and the history of Spanish colonialism in the region dating back to the 1600s and further, I think the number of figures that you saw emerge from that time and later on, conflicts with indigenous groups and the extraction of resources in those countries is absolutely fascinating. Bastante interesante. It's like there's something going on there. And I think if you want to understand our politics today, and especially modern politics, you have to understand both what's going on in Latin America right now and what was going on there in the past. And the only way to access primary source documents about those subjects is to know Spanish, and also to know Portuguese for the Portuguese-speaking part of that whole region. But I'll get to that eventually. I'm not quite there yet. I want to get it completely advanced in Spanish before I move on to Portuguese. But Yeah, so understanding the intersection of colonialism and the global economy and the development of independent states and also the neo-colonialism, which has made them not so independent. Um, Understanding all of this is going to be very difficult if you don't have access to sources that are in the language, news sources, historical documents. Um, you know, you can't comb through archives and look for interviews of people who were there at the time without knowing how to actually search through said databases. Otherwise, you're just going to be reading books in English of people who cited stuff that other people have said and trust the translations. You know, if you want to get a really accurate picture of the history, as I do, you have to go a bit deeper. And this is a desire that I've had since I was a teenager. You know, getting into history in a deep way when I was going through school, and then being in middle school and getting into political discussions with people online and reading my encyclopedias more deeply, buying books about the subject, looking at Wikipedia pretty extensively as well, and scouring the internet for other sources that they had cited or failed to cite. I looked all over. And in the process of all of that, I just wanted to find more information. I had a never-ending, undying desire to learn in that way. And it's remained strong, steadfast ever since. The curiosity's never died out. And as I've found myself becoming more confident and patient in my language acquisition skills, a crucial component to understanding that region and its history is now steadily coming into place for me, which is the acquisition of Spanish and then eventually Portuguese. But as to how I'm actually going about it, is kind of a multifaceted thing. The way that I have sought to learn Spanish has not been one way in particular. I've tried to have kind of an all hands on deck approach, take from as many sources as possible. And the reason I have sought to do that is because I like to get a lot of the same content, but in different contexts so that it remains interesting to me. Because if you're looking through grammar drills or through a grammar reference book, it's unlikely that you're going to retain all of that information, but it's good to have as a reference, right? It's good to have the same information in a variety of ways so that you can look over it whenever you need it. Additionally, I think that's true for vocabulary. You might get the exact same vocabulary in 1, 2, 3, 4 Anki decks that you also get on Duolingo, that you also get in a Teach Yourself book or in a ASIMIL course, but you should have all of those things together so that you're constantly being tested on these words so that you retain them better. And these are all things that I've used at various points, right, in order to build on the vocabulary that I have and to reinforce the vocabulary that I have. Anki in particular has been huge for me because you can download decks of existing courses like ASIMIL or Teach Yourself or Rosetta Stone, etc. And it acts as a spaced repetition system, so it shows you the card right when you're about to forget it, which serves to lodge it deeper into your long-term memory. But this is while you can also literally get the book and listen to the audio CDs themselves and do self-assessments, self-tests, along with the work that is inside of the workbook. So these are all things that you have access to, right? If you know what you're doing, literally all of this stuff is free. It's just a matter of wanting it enough. I probably shouldn't say that in a YouTube video, but whatever. Um, and so I I haven't in pursuit of building a base vocabulary, I haven't really discarded anything as an option, right? Like I've utilized all of it. But that was when I was trying to get the most common 250, 500, 750, 1,000 words, and then also trying to learn how to construct sentences with said words more easily, so I wouldn't have to be struggling thinking about it. But after you get past that point, listening and reading is going to be the main way that you acquire new vocabulary, which is why I really like Link, which is a website that was founded by Steve Kaufman, the polyglot YouTuber who speaks like 20 languages. The dude is like 78 years old. Huge inspiration for me. He's basically the grandfather of the polyglot community on YouTube. Everybody who talks about language acquisition online kind of looks to him for inspiration, right? And I myself hope that I can be like him when I am an old man. But his program, Link, has plenty of mini stories as well as content that you can import into it from YouTube videos or Netflix shows or books, etc. I wish it had more content, but that's okay. And the words that you don't know, you can save, and you can test yourself on them within the program. It also has the ability to test you on sentence construction. So let's say you're reading one of the mini stories and you need to construct the sentence. Well, it'll have you construct the sentence yourself from memory, which will give you a better sense of like what the word order is actually like in your target language. And this is all while you're listening, you're reading, and so you have multiple forms of input for this content that you're being tested on, and likely you'll know some words that are being used from this other input that you're receiving from the grammar books, from the teach yourself books, from the complete Spanish, from the Anki decks, and when you're just starting out, even something like Duolingo, even though it's very flawed, it can be helpful when you just start out. So if you're doing it a lot, but all of this stuff has to be done in tandem with one another. Additionally, while we're on the subject of Anki, something that's really useful to do with Anki is to take songs that you like, or TV shows, YouTube videos, really anything that interests you, make decks out of the audio in those things, and have on one side the Spanish words from that content, and then have on the other side the English translation. And I like to have literal translations quite a bit, so I'll have the literal translation as well, just so I can get a better sense for how the words are placed and what they actually mean, like in context. And it'll kind of adjust my brain more toward what Spanish is like. And so I really like making decks out of media. But also, at the same time, you have to write them down, because when you're writing things down, you're getting that extra that extra level by which your memories are being formed. I forget what it's called. There's like a special term for it. That's why I'm being vague. But your brain is making a greater connection with what you're learning about. So if you're actually writing out all of your vocabulary as well as example sentences, it doesn't have to be all the time. Just try to do it as much as you can to really get the brain moving. You will be able to remember these things better. And so that's what I like to do in addition to all of these other resources that I'm using together. I will write the stuff down. And it's helpful to do that with the exercises in the books as well. Another way that you can utilize this content with writing as well is to take the words that you already know and try and write out brand new sentences with those words that you know. Obviously, try to make sure that they're grammatically correct. Try to make sure that you're utilizing the right word. Sometimes, when you think you might want to use the word para, it's actually de. And sometimes when you want to use that, it's actually por. So it's not always going to be right. But the point is to be thinking about it, to try and get the mental muscles moving so that they can grow, and then take this information that you're using into conversation. So jump on Discord, jump on italki, which is one some people use. I haven't used it personally. Jump on Omegle, whatever you have to do to get conversations in. There are people to talk to in your target language. They're out there, and it's free. You don't have to pay for a tutor. You don't have to pay for anything that I'm talking about in this video. Besides the last thing, which I am saving for last, but it's only $5 a month, so whatever. You can do all of this, right? Oh yeah, dictionaries. You can add a pop-up dictionary to your browser. You can download plenty of dictionaries for free. There's also lots of websites like Reverso Context is one of them. But you just look around, just look for dictionaries, and you can find plenty of example sentences, plenty of grammar explanations, explanations on the conjugations, explanations on what the words mean, and what they can mean in different contexts. All of that is out there, right? You just have to search. Just use Google. Google is your best friend, right? Patience is also your best friend because you might not find exactly what you want right away. Just look for it. But by far, listening and reading is going to be the biggest tool in your toolbox, but it can't be without guidance. You have to be looking at these references so that you're not aimlessly walking around in the dark. And you have to build up that base of the most common vocabulary. But ideally, you would want to expand beyond that because, hey, you want to be good at the language, right? And so it's a multifaceted thing. All of this stuff works in tandem. I really can't stress that enough. Another thing, which I've known multiple people now who have sworn by, I've never used it, but I hear it's very good, is a website called Language Reactor, where you take Netflix series, YouTube videos, music, whatever, what have you, web pages, and you can make decks out of the vocabulary that is in that content which interests you. Now, I have done this the old-fashioned way. I have just made the Anki decks myself, which admittedly is very slow, but you can do it, right? I didn't want to pay that $5. What can I say? And while you're making the decks, you can listen to some music in your target language, which is a huge one, so it's not like you're not getting any input, just sing along and go about your day like that. Oh yeah, that's the other thing too, is that you can listen to music constantly. You can listen to podcasts which are tailored to whatever level in the language you're at, and you can just have that on all the time. Try to have it on for as much as possible, and try to have on something that you can comprehend as much as possible, because it's not going to help you if you're just listening to something that you comprehend a very small amount of, maybe for like referencing one or two words, like you're exposed to it, which is good, but that's not going to be nearly as good as comprehensible input, something that you can understand like 85 to 90% of, which is going to be hard at first, but you develop that base vocabulary in order to comprehend what you are consuming. Even if what you're consuming is just a mini story for little kids, that's still something which is going to contribute to your vocabulary, which is going to allow for you to be able to read something for a second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, and eighth grader, and further on into the future, up the grades, until eventually you're reading shit for college students, if you have the desire to learn to that point. And so all of this works in tandem with one another. But all of it requires patience and dedication. But if it is a language you truly care about, if it's a language that you have chose to make a part of your identity and a fixture of your life, if you have a desire to go to that country and connect with its people on not even on a deep level, but just on a surface level, you're going to do it. You will hold together, you will keep the faith, you will be patient, and you will let that perfectionist inside of you die. Because that's really what you have to do in all of this. Like, I'm talking about right now, like playing Dark Souls, right? When you play Dark Souls, you have to die constantly. You have to make mistakes constantly. You have to go back. You have to redo things. But it's all good because you're having fun while you're doing it, and you are improving steadily at the game, which is what matters. What matters is making progress. And with learning a language, you may not always see that progress right away. It happens slowly. But when you see it, you really see it. It's very, very apparent when the progress has been made. And so you be patient with yourself, enjoy the process, let the brain do what the brain does, and you will be pleasantly surprised. And so, in a nutshell, that's how I've gone about learning Spanish, and those are some of the reasons for why I'm learning Spanish. I have an interest in a lot of languages. As I said in another recent video, I've picked up Tagalog, which I am very excited about, though I'm not spending nearly as much time on it. I want to do a video about the Tagalog rap scene, because there's quite a few interesting things going on there, but that is for a separate day. I'm really interested in Portuguese, really interested in Farsi and Catalan, and even Serbian to an extent I want to dive into. So there's a lot out there for me, right? There's a lot that I want to sink my teeth into, that I found myself dabbling with a little bit, but the thing that I really spend the bulk of my time on, I'm talking 10, 12 hours a day, is Spanish. And that's where my heart has been for, like, it's gonna be, by the time summer's almost here, it will have been for a year that I've been studying this. And so I feel very good about that. I feel very good about the progress I've made so far. And I feel great about this language. I love this language. And I can't wait. I can't wait to learn it more later today. And by later today, I mean immediately after this video. So let me try to think if there's anything else I want to express here. It's pretty early into the game for me, all things considered. So I think we're getting around that time that I ought to make a progress report, like of me speaking and constructing sentences. But I think that's going to come at a time when my pronunciation is at least slightly better. So give me like a month. And that's going to come up next month. Be ready. Be there or be square for my video entirely in Spanish. Now, I'm thinking, I feel like there's something else I want to say in this video. I just don't remember what it was. I really should make notes for these things. I've said so many times that I'm going to start writing notes for my videos, but literally every time I do one of these, I just go off the dome, and I just hope that it works out for me. After doing this so many times, I've managed to get pretty good at that, but you don't always remember everything, unfortunately. No, I think I pretty much got everything. Do a lot of Anki. Read and listen a lot on Link. Do the Teach Yourself books. Do the complete books. Try to get some writing in if you can. Not everybody is interested in that. The process might be a little bit slower if you're not writing things down, but that's fine. Just, keep going. But more than anything, find whatever works for you, right? my methods are kind of all over the place because, again, I like to consume a lot of content from a lot of different places because I think that reinforces what I already know the best, and it also gives me a lot of different things that I can add on to that. Um, and so I have this kind of scattershot all over the place approach. But maybe for you, you just entirely want to be making decks out of songs, or entirely be watching shows for children, and picking up here and there what you can from doing that. I don't really know. It depends on what your prerogative is, but I also think that the method I'm describing in this video is possibly the best for getting a lot of vocabulary really fast, and that's why I'm utilizing it. Um, it's not as if I just came up with this. This is stuff that I have heard from people who speak 10, 12 different languages quite fluently. So take from that what you will. Um, I think that's it, guys. I think that is it. I really can't wait to get started on Portuguese. I'm really excited about that. I think some great things are going to come out of the Portuguese learning, and I will be learning European Portuguese because I kind of prefer how it sounds to the Brazilian variety, but it's fine because the written language is, you can understand it. And that's most of what I want it for, is to be able to read stuff. But as far as actually speaking with people, I think I'm definitely going to try to develop a European Portuguese accent. Um, I don't even know how useful that is now, though, because so much, like, at least among the youth, so much slang from Brazil is like entering Portugal, kind of like how American slang enters Australia, because Australia doesn't have that much of a youth culture of its own, and so they just gather these things by osmosis. That's way off on a different tangent. Point is, languages are awesome, and learning a language is very fun, and that's what I'm doing.